Hello, Susan Corbett, custom machine quilter. In this video, I'm going to be talking, not showing quilting, of how I quilted this Celtic knot quilt. I don't usually take on Celtic knot quilts because it's not possible to freehand those. They need to be marked and thought out ahead of time. And the parallel lines need to be parallel and smooth. And that's not a thing I excel at. And also, what made this one different was my client agreed to wash out all the marks. And most people don't want to have anything to do with washing their quilt. But we knew the colors in this quilt were not going to run. And so I was grateful for the chance to play in this design style. It was like quilting a whole cloth quilt. And really that's what's going on here. It's more background than anything. And it was a significant design challenge. I didn't go to art school. And this is my art school. So yeah, see all that empty space? This quilt took some planning. So I looked all over the internet for ideas and ended up, this is just some of the stuff I ended up with. I used stencils, which were of course the wrong size. So I had to make a paper pattern here of this one to get it to be the size I wanted. I ordered more than I ended up using. And I did let the client tell me what she wanted because I, of course wanted to make her happy. I suggested let's go with the Celtic alphabet, which has oodles of designs, all kinds of animals and stuff, and all she really wanted was dragons. So I came up with a few dragons that she liked. Once you get into dragon territory, like there was one I picked that I just was in love with, and she thought it looked scary, so I didn't get to use that one. And of course all the ones I really wanted to use, they're not copyright free, so I had to buy some designs, and then had to size them and redraw them to get a dark line that I could see. And so therefore I ended up with non-parallel lines, which is a big no-no when it comes to Celtic knots. They need to be smooth and parallel, and they're not. So this design is a Helen Squire design I pulled out of a magazine years and years ago, and it just seemed to want to go, so I used that one. This is a stencil that I bought for, I made a jacket that I painted with fabric paint, and so I loved that little design right there, so that turned into this. I use that a couple of places. I loved this one a lot, and that became part of this design. This motif here is a ring, so I was going to end up with a great big empty middle, and I don't know, those two were together at some point, and I thought they might work well together, so I don't know if that's successful or not, but that's what ended up happening. Once I got on a roll, I was really on a roll, and I was liking all this design. That I used the way that pattern came. Loved it, just loved it. But as with all this stuff, okay, there was empty spaces all over the place. I went looking for triangular designs and didn't find very many. So to fill in, where'd it go? Okay. This is not a triangular design. And to make it one, I was drawing and drawing and I ended up with this guy. So that's kind of some freehand Celtic knot stuff. I mean, I looked at a lot of stuff. And I think that works. I love it. I hope she loves it. You know, we'll have to see. I'm Irish. She is Irish. So we were putting our heads together for some ideas. And there had to be some shamrocks in there somewhere. So I put those together. Again, I don't know how well I like it in the end, but that's what ended up happening. This is an extremely old, well, you know, that design probably shows up in a lot of different cultures. I don't know. And I realized late in the ball game I didn't have one, so I just ended up drawing one myself. And I think that turned out pretty well. I loved, let's see. This one. And I had a space where that was gonna work, but I needed it to be bigger. So I drew and drew and drew. Ended up with this, which is imperfect, but oh well. I think it still came out really good. And now, of course, I wanna learn how to really draw Celtic knots and go to town with all of that. I used only a portion of that design. You know, see, there's one I bought that I didn't end up using, but that's really good. I like it a lot. It was just a matter of what was gonna fit where. So I made endless trips to office supply stores to enlarge patterns, and you know, it was a lot of work. It was a lot of fun, but it was a lot of work. So all this choosing and designing took hours and hours way before I ever took a stitch. And then the process of marking took way longer than I thought it was going to, because of course I don't ever mark. And that's a whole other issue. But so let's have a look at the blocks and how they turned out in the end. All right, here is that quilt. I set out to have the quilting make it non-directional, but the work always knows more than I do, and it turned into a directional quilt for any number of reasons. So this is the top of the quilt. There's my dragon. I still ended up with all kinds of room, but I ended up filling with some swirls and, you know, scroll work. Which fit in pretty well because it was just an extension of the background quilting design. One of the decisions I had to make early on was, is the sashing a separate element or is it all one background? And I thought it would be kind of silly to treat the sashing as sashing, so it kind of is and it kind of isn't. I don't know what to tell you. That's just what ended up happening. In all four corners, I did this dragon, which came in two versions. One's supposed to go right, one's supposed to go left. And I kept mixing them up. In the end, I think, I don't know, he probably isn't big enough. I think he should have stood out more. But I still like him. I think he's awesome. Fits really well here. Okay. So that design, that was gonna go, I think, on the bottom of the quilt. and he ended up there. Don't ask me, it was a long story. I took a break halfway through making this quilt because I kept getting confused and mixed up, and I needed to clear my head. But I think that design works anywhere, in any direction you put it. So there's that one. I had more fun when it came to quilting the actual blocks themselves, because it went more and more freehand, of course. So I filled in the space in the corners of those blocks with whatever fit, and hopefully with whatever design complemented the appliqué knot. But I ended up with so much more detail than I thought I was going to. See, a quilt like this turns into, well, it's just space, and more space. It has to be filled up with something. And then there was a question of, what to do inside all those little spaces, what to put in the center, to quilt or not to quilt inside the appliqué knot itself. Okay. At a certain point, I find you have to quit motifing the whole thing up and just do some quilting. The client liked this design. I don't know that it's not Celtic, but it's pretty and it seemed to want to go there. The design at the very center, the pattern doesn't look like that, but I changed it up a little bit because that's how it seemed to want to go. I don't have a way of explaining that stuff to you. That's just what happens in the moment. Good or bad, right or wrong. This is one of my favorite blocks. I like that very middle. Since there was round all throughout that, more so than some of the other blocks, I thought, let's put a round something in the corners. And then once I did that, I didn't know what to do next. And I took out my rulers and began playing, and that's how those curved lines happened. You just plunk your ruler down and see what it wants to do and what might work. And that's how that came together. What I was really unsure of, but I like now, is the little dimensional work between that round knot and the bands of echo around it. But again, that turned out really ornate. Okay. My other favorite block, I wish the light would show better here. Let's see. This one, there we go. I guess we have to talk about symmetry. This block has some symmetry, but it goes asymmetrical, and I didn't know what to do with it. The center is part of a stencil design that I had that just kind of wanted to go there. And I did, I was playing with rulers all the way around it. But this is not the same as what's happening here. So I took off doing these lines and then realized it's not, I'll have to do something else. So I didn't know if that was going to work or not. In the end, I wish all these lines appeared more to connect. They're also separate, right? The lines on the outside don't look like they have anything to do with what's happening in the middle. The happy accident, I think, is that even though it's not the most cohesive design, I think it still works. I love it. It looks like there's movement. It looks really complex. I wish I had about 50 more rulers, because everything was always the wrong size or the wrong shape. But I think that looks pretty darn good. I like it. One idea I had, of course, at the end, this would have been a lot simpler had I picked one design like that and used it in every outer setting triangle, but I didn't. That would have simplified matters, but I also think that would have been really boring. So for this block, the reason I put those shamrocks where I did is because this is another block where the corners are different shapes. So it was going to be tricky with positioning a motif. So once again, I used that little bitty design, that little knot from the decorator stencil, and just added some shamrocks to it. In retrospect, I don't love it completely because I thought those shamrocks were small, but they look huge here. And in real life, shamrocks are teeny tiny things. So I don't like the size of the knot in relation to the shamrocks, but that's what happened. I quilted some little ones in the, in the interior. And then I thought, well, I'm overthinking things. So that's what happened. Okay. I love this block. I love what happened there throughout. I keep spritzing to get that blue line out of there, and it keeps persisting. Thankfully, the client she's agreed to wash the quilt with soap, so all that is going to come out. But I put that line there. I need registration marks to keep things straight. To know where to end that line and size things up. This was another one where the asymmetry gave me some problems. See, I was quilting this here, and then after I did that, I thought, well, it doesn't look like that up here. So it's different, but I think it's fine. I love it. I love the echoing inside the block. That little figure 8 idea popped into my head at some point, and I love the way that looks. I think that is really good. Love it, love it, love it. This big triangle is just a really enlarged version of a little bitty one that I used in the background of another interior block. That looks pretty good. All of these corner triangles ended up being different because of the, I was trying to position the motif so he'd be right side up, and I ended up with all different kinds of empty white space around him. The border was a design she picked out of a catalog, the client, I mean, and even that was hard. Because as I say, I need about 50 more rulers. So I fudged and fudged all over the place, but it looks awesome. I love it. Okay, and this block, I found a motif that I thought would work and used it in all 4 corners. Did some echoing around the block to fill in some space, and then did swirls and circles in the middle. This is a block at the bottom of the quilt. So I dressed up this motif. It's not exactly Celtic, but it kind of has, you know, the same sort of feel to it, and it didn't fill the triangle at all. You know, I could have turned it upside down and tried to fill the hole, but no, the sizing was still off. So since there was a leaf in there, I added some more leaves and organic elements around it. And I know the client's gonna love that part. So that turned out pretty well. Here is a look at the back of the quilt. Wow. So it's a blinding snowstorm. We would have had a whole cloth quilt on the back, except for, well, let's see, there's a big nice seam right in the middle of it. So that's one thing. There had to be thread changes. That's a skinny, spindly thread, but still that shows up. And she wanted to match the color of the border. So I don't think that is the best it could have looked, but it's still pretty awesome. This isn't a quilt that'll ever be used. She's gonna hang it up on a wall. So you get what you get. But on the whole, I think it's, I don't know. I've been looking at this way too long. I think it's a win. I think it's good. Why isn't there any video of the quilting? Because that would have been a long, boring, painful thing for y'all to look at. It was all plod, plod, plod. It was slow. It was, you know, there wouldn't have been too much interesting to see. But I hope that was helpful, instructive. This quilt stretched me in so many different ways, and for that experience alone, it was well worth doing. All right, I'll talk to you next time.